doesn't make sense to walk. We hopped.
This is the best way for me to travel.
I would skip down the sides of some of those hills like a little kid. When I was in 4th or 5th grade, we used to skip. It just didn't make sense to walk.
The astronauts collected the oldest rocks ever found.
Holy smoly!
Some up to 4.5 billion years old.
Here's a football-sized rock that was 50% buried.
Of course, the astronauts examined the rocks themselves, but in time, they would be investigated in minute detail.
My golly, this time goes fast.
One of the things that hit me very quickly was that they smelled like spent gunpowder, just like you fired a shotgun or even a rifle. Very familiar.
The composition of these rocks has led to a bold theory. Our moon was born of our Earth. Scientists now believe that 4.5 billion years ago, an object the size of Mars crashed into Earth, releasing unfathomable energy. The collision ejected over 70 trillion tons of rock into space. The debris coalesced into a fiery molten world, creating the desert dry rocks as well as the volcanoes and oceans of lava. Eventually, the moon cooled, hiding all the traces of its cataclysmic birth. On this overpoweringly grey world, Cernan helped to discover a glimpse of colour. Orange soil.
Stirred it up with my feet. Hey, it is! I can see it from here. It's orange. Fantastic.
Cernan is transported back in time as the soil is made of orange volcanic beads, almost 4 billion years old, the remains of an ancient volcanic fire fountain. They're a reminder this seemingly dead world had a fiery birth. On the 14th of December 1972, Gene Cernan left the moon, the last man to ever visit another world.
That's America's challenge of today. Has forged man's destiny of tomorrow.
His voyage was proof that we have the technology and the courage to visit the moons. And if we could get to our moon using technology now more than 30 years old, imagine where we could go next. Saturn, a giant ball of gas 800 times larger than the Earth, enveloped by its majestic rings. The rings are probably a moon graveyard. Millions of fragments, the remains of long destroyed fractured moons. And 1 million kilometers beyond the rings is the largest of Saturn's moons, Titan. Titan, shrouded from view by a haze of smoggy atmosphere. The surface of Titan has never been seen, but infrared studies suggest that when we break through the atmosphere, we will find a world that seems strangely familiar. Titan is the coolest moon in the solar system. It may look like Earth, but the lakes are made of liquid natural gas, a chilly 300 degrees below zero. Although swimming in them would freeze the skin off your body, with the right protective clothing, it could be a possibility. Because the gravity on Titan is just 1/7 what it is on Earth, you could pull yourself out of the water like a dolphin. Swimming in a lake of flammable natural gas a billion miles from Earth would certainly be an experience. But what about traveling from above?
One way to explore Titan would be by balloon. Because unlike any other moon in the solar system, Titan has a thick atmosphere, and that makes it possible to fly.
An atmosphere means that Titan has sky, clouds, wind, and air in which to float. In fact, NASA already has a balloon design, and plans are in place for a plane, even a helicopter. Within 50 years, there may be a balloon floating on another world. But on Titan, it would be possible to achieve the ultimate dream in flight.
In fact, the air on Titan is so thick and the gravity so low that all a human being would need to fly is a small pair of wings.
Using a set of wings only 3 meters across and powered only by our muscles, we could soar like a bird. Climbing up into clouds of natural gas. When those clouds get too heavy, they release a downpour. But on Titan, it doesn't rain water, it rains fuel. The drops, twice as large as on Earth, fall like snow. The petrochemical rain erodes the landscape, creating a mirror image of Earth, of valleys and hills, and filling the lakes with an explosive mix.
If there were oxygen on Titan and you struck a match, the whole place would blow up.
A deafening roar, enough fuel to power the Earth for 50 million years, going up in flames. To explore the 95 moons of our solar system, specialized equipment is needed. Here at NASA's Johnson Space Center, they're outfitting the astronauts of the future.
This is called the Mark III spacesuit. It is very possible you might see something like this on the surface of the moon or other worlds at some point.
The first requirement of a spacesuit is to provide a completely sealed environment. In the vacuum of space, air pressure is needed. Otherwise, the fluids from our body will bubble off until they're literally freeze-dried.
It's just a big balloon shaped like you that lets you move and keeps all the gases inside, in this case oxygen, to allow you to breathe and live. If you didn't have that, your body fluids would literally fizz or boil off like when you open a soda can. Your body fluids would fizz, and I don't like that happening very much to me anyway.
On the moons, we're going to need mobility. Ball bearings help mimic our own flexibility. Kevlar, the same material used for bulletproof vests, keeps the suit strong enough to protect against a fatal tear. Moving around, the body can usually produce enough heat as long as the warmth is trapped inside.
And what we do is use what we call multi-layer insulation. A layer of mylar and then a layer of vacuum, and a layer of mylar and a layer of vacuum. In this case, there's 5 layers. It works like a thermos bottle works and keeps you very well insulated.
With a suit designed on these principles, most of the 95 moons can be explored. But the moons of Jupiter will offer a major challenge. Jupiter is a nuclear furnace that showers these worlds with a lethal dose of radiation. But one of these moons may hold the first ocean and the first life found off planet Earth. "95 moons, each one offering a strange alien surface to explore. But in the shadow of Jupiter, there is one world that offers the ultimate possibility, the possibility of life. This moon is a small icy outpost called Europa. Europa is cold and desolate beyond imagination. The surface seems like the last place in the solar system you would look for life. But break through the ice, and there may be the first ocean ever found off the planet Earth. The first new ocean since Balboa, the Spanish explorer, discovered the Pacific in 1513.
I think the biggest surprise would be that a moon could have an ocean. An actual ocean that could be an environment suitable for biology. That's a real mind blower.
If I were to bet on one or the other, I would think that life would be more probable currently on Europa than on Mars.
I think to stand on Europa would be, to me, one of the most profound experiences of my life. It would be a place that might, under our feet, harbor life.
Europa will be a challenge to visit. Here, Jupiter rains a vicious hail of radiation that cooks the living like a microwave, and temperatures hover at minus 150 degrees Celsius. To explore Europa, something like a tank would be needed.
So this special vehicle for exploring Europa is going to have to be lead shielded to protect me from the radiation. I'm going to need a regulated atmosphere, plenty of oxygen to breathe, CO2 scrubber to remove what I breathe out, and I'll have to have a good supply of fuel, both to keep me warm and to properly explore this amazing place.
Europa's road is a bumpy one. There are 90-meter ice ridges that form towering walls, and at the bottom, ice boulders block the way. It may not seem apparent, but you would be driving on top of an ocean, driving on a frozen ocean through a maze of tortured, jumbled ice as hard as concrete, and riddled with deep cracks, some extending 1,500 kilometers. Walking along, it may be possible to see the ocean water rising from below.
On Europa, Jupiter exerts tidal forces that distort the whole body, so the whole moon gets stretched. When that happens, the surface gets stressed, cold, and cracks initiate. So you might have a crack like this on Europa, and it'll open and close every day, day after day.
The pull of Jupiter's gravity is stretching and squeezing the inside of this moon, creating enough heat to melt underground ice. The melted ice forms a subterranean ocean, and warm water rises to the surface. On Europa is not just the first ocean, but these. The first icebergs ever to be found away from planet Earth. You are now on a journey to the closest place on Earth to Europa. It is the icy, frozen Arctic Ocean.
Everything we see on Europa has to do with there being a liquid water ocean under the ice. And that's what this place is all about also. Here we're on a solid surface, but just below us is the ocean.
Scientists are coming here to the Arctic searching for clues to the ultimate question. Is there life on Europa? For if we can find life in this extreme environment, then there's a chance of finding it on another world.
It represents, this frozen Arctic Ocean, just a spectacularly extreme environment that allows us to explore and test the limits of life on this planet, which therefore allows us to think about the limits of life elsewhere, or if it's even possible to have life elsewhere.
In the frigid Arctic, Jody Deming and Hayo Aiken search for the very limits of life. They drill into the ice, its temperature minus 28 degrees Celsius, a temperature at which no living organism has ever been found.
Well, the most sophisticated way to look for life in these samples would be to take a section here unmelted and put it under a microscope in a cold room that's at this temperature, stain it with a DNA-specific stain so that the bacteria light up for you, and then voila, there they are.
These are living, breathing bacteria found where no organisms should exist, in a place as close as we can get to Europa.
If I'm honest with you, I'm never surprised by what microorganisms are doing on this planet. They really have to be expected to do more than we ever think they're going to do. We have certain preconceived notions about what's too hot, what's too cold, what's too acidic, what's too. But every time we look and push a limit further and further, we find microorganisms happily perking along under those conditions.
With life thriving in the harsh, frozen Arctic, it's possible, perhaps even likely, that Europa's saltwater ocean, protected from deadly radiation by a layer of ice, will be home to the most profound discovery of all time.
In an environment like this, where you'd have a crack and water coming up and down every day, I could imagine several kinds of critters. You could have some things that hang in on the edge of the cracks. They'd want to be a few centimeters down to be safe from radiation, but as long as they're within a few feet of the top, they would get enough sunlight for photosynthesis. Other organisms might want to float with the water and just come up near the top sometimes, and then, next day go on back down and just ride up and down with the soup.
Soon, we may know if Europa harbors life. NASA scientists are currently designing a probe called the Cryobot to explore Europa's ocean. The Cryobot will land on the surface, but that's just the beginning of its amazing journey. For it will fire up a nuclear heater and begin a slow descent through the ice. Melting at a rate of 22 meters a day, it may take 6 months to penetrate the thick ice. Like something out of a science fiction film, the Cryobot will split open and a submarine armed with a remote camera will emerge into an ocean bigger than all of our oceans combined. But the Cryobot isn't science fiction. It's a current NASA research project. And within 50 years, we may be piloting a submarine, looking for life on another world.
When I talk to my friends about hunting for life on another planet, they always imagine Klingons or something like this. I would be satisfied with slime mold. That to me would be one of the most profound discoveries we've ever made.
It's an organic soup which was cooking for 4.5 billion years. That same soup on Earth cooked for less than 1 billion years and gave us life. So if I had to guess, I'd say there was a pretty good chance there's something very interesting going on in Europa.
We are in the midst of a revolution. Once thought to be dull and lifeless, the moons are now known to offer the most exotic real estate in the solar system. Today, it is the moons that beckon us. In recent years alone, scientists have found at least 20 new moons, one of the greatest periods of moon discovery ever. And there's evidence that at least 2 more moons of Jupiter may also have oceans. And with that, the hope of life. Where will we go next? We've got at least 95 worlds to choose from.
Find life on planets beyond our solar system. This is an imaginary journey, researched and verified by scientific experts, to a planet 6.5 light years away. The Von Braun, an interstellar spacecraft, has landed on imaginary alien planet Darwin 4. Its probes, Ike and Leo, have discovered that life on Darwin 4 is full of surprises.
The science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke said that there either is or is not intelligent life in outer space. However, either thought is frightening. However, I tend to look at it as exhilarating. I tend to believe that when we make contact with another intelligent life form, we will perhaps have a tremendous bonanza of scientific information, so much cultural exchange that will be involved. As a scientist, I look forward to the day when we make contact with other intelligent life forms in the universe. So rather than being frightened, I think we'd approach the idea with open arms, with open mind, realizing that this could be a turning point in the history of the human race.
It has taken the Von Braun 42 years, travelling at roughly 1/5 of the speed of light, to complete its imaginary interstellar journey. To explore this pristine alien planet, it deploys a Darwin Reconnaissance Orbiter, or DRO, and 2 probes, Ike Newton and Leo da Vinci. Ike and Leo are equipped with tiny spider probes that help gather data from hard-to-reach places. Also on board are a series of camera discs, which can be deployed when a closer view is needed. Information transmitted back to Earth would take over 6 years to reach scientists, so the Von Braun and its twin probes are programmed to process data and make decisions on their own. The Von Braun evaluates the information gathered by Ike and Leo. It issues assignments for the twin probes, who have the intellectual capacity of 4-year-olds. The Von Braun and its probes have met technical challenges on Darwin 4. The simulated expedition has uncovered predators and gentle giants. But probe Leo has gone missing, leaving his twin, Ike, to carry on the mission alone. Ike continues to explore Darwin's ecosystems, and the weather has proved puzzling. It's day 130 on Darwin 4, and never once has Ike seen it rain. As far as Ike's sensors can determine, Darwin's surface water flow from underground aquifers and springs, which may explain why forests can only exist in small pockets. Ike takes his survey to a high meadow, where his side-scanning radar detects some new movement. The probe dispenses a camera disc, and the sound throws a herd of literalopes into a panic. These flying skewers hunt using sonar. No creature on Darwin 4 is safe from the lance of these aerial killers. The lance itself is hollow and as strong as titanium. Running through its center is a razor-spiked tongue that bores through the toughest hide. Helpless prey are killed and drained of fluids. Scavengers called jet darters feed on the rest.
The skewers are a remarkable large animal for flight in the fact that they're not using their wings or aerofoils in order to fly. They seem to be jet propulsed.
Using the skewer to impact a prey item and then lift it is highly unexpected. The forces involved there are tremendous. In a flying animal, if you suddenly attach all that weight on the front, that shifts the center of balance of the animal, which is very critical for flying, which is almost certainly why they almost go straight up after they impale a prey item, because the center of gravity, the center of weight for the animal, is shifted so far forward. dropping of the prey item and having another one swoop it and catch it in the air is, again, very unusual.
Kind of reminded me of what we see when we throw large hunks of fish up to frigate birds when you're out fishing, the way they fight and interact for it.
We'd want to know, is there competition here, or is this cooperative behavior? Are these related individuals? All sorts of interesting questions about skewers.
One piece of evidence that suggests the probability of primitive forms of life appearing may be reasonably high is that life seems to have appeared on Earth shortly after the Earth cooled sufficiently for life to be possible. If life was very unlikely, one might have expected life not to have appeared until late in the 10 billion years or so that the Earth has to live.
The primitive life forms on Darwin 4 move through a dense, humid atmosphere and a lower gravity than on Earth. Pairs of predatory skewers rule the skies like falcons. They maneuver by changing the shape of their 15-meter wingspans. But it's not their wings that propel them. Skewers create methane gas internally and combust it in 4 jet-like pods. Literalopes defend themselves by scattering in all directions. The skewers are forced to choose only one target. Darwin's aerial predator is literally knocked from the sky. But by what? It's day 135 of the mission, and high above the foothills of Darwin's equatorial mountain chain, Ike's sensors detect unusual bursts of energy. A swarm of scavengers called jet darters stray into a danger zone. What looks like a colony of oversized mushrooms is a deadly maze. Ike's programmed to gather more data. He needs to investigate the organisms themselves, but will not take any risks. A mini probe is the only expendable option. The crawler will look for the power source from below. Acting like a light switch, the crawler has closed a fatal gap between 2 electric charges. Ike's sensors pick up a familiar signature. Just walking on Darwin 4 is a hazardous undertaking. Even a 5-story Groveback must watch its step. A colony of beach quills launches an assault on the careless creature. The quills penetrate deep into the creature's hide